On digital release is a new Australian film, courtesy of Bounty Films, a film called Blue Canaries. And it's my great pleasure to be speaking to the writers, directors of Blue Canaries, Luke Mounsey and Andy Lane. Welcome to Movie Metropolis.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you very much for
Good to be
speaking to me.
Now, this is such an intriguing police drama. With a troubled teenager in the center of it all. What was the inspiration behind writing the story and making the film?
The original inspiration came from a friend of mine. Actually, I've known this guy longer than I've known anyone in my life that's not part of my family, but he was a 20-year beat cop. And we sat down one night with him for just like to have a little chat and a catch up, and away he went with these wonderful stories, but they're either heartbreaking or full of hope, or and everywhere in between. And as the conversation went, it was hard not to start imagining a film. It was great.
Okay, so was it quite a process writing the screenplay?
It was. It was sort of two processes actually, because we had one version of the screenplay that we had written before COVID and before the George uh, Black Lives Matter situation that happened in America, and when the death in custody protests were happening during COVID in Australia as well. So there was a script that was before all of that happened, and then everything needed to change in response to that. Otherwise, it would have been less relevant as a story.
Hmm.
So it was quite a process. It was really two scripts that were written.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I mean, when it comes to writing, Luke and I met uh, doing our masters of screenwriting at BCA. So the writing of the script was pretty much our entire focus. We've written other things before, and our intent was to write something that we could make ourselves because it's so hard to get funding in the Australian model. So we knew that we could write, and once we got the ideas from Luke's friend about how to do an interesting take on a police drama, we knew that we could write something that we could make inexpensively. We were about to shoot before COVID, and then George Floyd and the protests really opened our eyes and everyone's eyes to how the role of police, especially in culture and in things like films and TV, and how society had moved on from an idea of just showing cops doing their thing and them always being the good guys. We had to be more circumspect and just do more research and be more insightful into the role of the police and the system of policing in Australia and how it treats the people it's supposed to protect.
Right. It's a very contained film, and the relationship between the two police officers I found really so interesting, and I can imagine that getting the right cast to
Mm.
portray that would have been a challenge.
Absolutely was. It was.
Yeah, when
Especially,
it came to casting, because we had no resources, uh, we just started talking to people and people we knew. We knew some actors. We did a lot of work just scouring through people on Star Now, that sort of thing, just looking for talent that no one had heard of, including ourselves. And we got a lot of auditions and that sort of thing. But then I think the thing that really, the part of the process that helped us was that we just set a really long rehearsal period. So once we had David and Tali, the two leads, we rehearsed with them for over a month. They both came from theatre backgrounds, so they were used to rehearsal. And because of through that rehearsal, that we were able to write the script with their input, tailor the characters toward them, and with all the other characters as well. So every character that's in there came in for a rehearsal, and the way that they embodied that character gave us a new way to rewrite that character to tailor it more toward them, because we felt that would be just a more grounded, lead to a more grounded and better result. And
Yes.
hopefully that's what you're seeing when you're watching it, hopefully.
Oh, I was certainly quite intrigued. It was well written, and the relationship between the two was very good. And of course, the central issue that they had to face. Tell me about use of locations, and obviously, with as a low budget film, it would have been difficult to do all that.
Yeah, I mean, we were using the traditional low budget options, which were, do we know anyone who owns a house? Do
Hmm.
we know anyone who owns a car? Do we know anyone who any resources that were available to us that we weren't going to have to spend a lot of money on? We were taking those into account as we were writing the film, which was useful. And then all of the outdoor shots, a lot of it is shot at night, so we didn't have to worry too much about continuity with light. A lot of it was shot just on footpaths and things, which you can do if your crew is small enough. We were lucky enough to have really like exceptionally talented but quite raw crew, so we were able to keep everything down to minimum. So we didn't need to block off streets, and we didn't need to have police supervision to use costume police people. It was all very technical, very and tactical as well.
Uh-huh, uh-huh. How long did it take to shoot? And it was shot around Melbourne, which I found very interesting.
It was all shot in the northern suburbs, except for one scene was in the southern suburbs, but almost like 90% of the film is in Fitzroy, Brunswick, Carlton area.
And
Right.
And
it took us 3 weeks, I think. I think it
yeah,
was, yeah,
I
about
think it was
15 days, 15 shoot days.
yeah,
Okay.
I think it was 18 shoot days in total, but a few of those days were only half days and COVID hit in the middle of it, so we had a day that was driving. So in total it was about 15 days.
Yeah,
Okay.
it would have been less, but COVID
Mm.
Yes. Yeah. No, I
got us a
understand.
couple of
Yes.
days.
COVID impacted so many
Mm.
productions. Yeah. So, how interesting to hear that.
Mm.
And how did the two of you work together in terms of the direction of the film?
Luke and I, as I said, we've known each other for a long time now, and the reason I think we work together, we also worked together for a long time on a TV show, uh, a factual sports TV show, just writing. Every week we'd put out a half-hour show for a company. For how long did we do that for, Luke? Like
300
4 or 5 years.
episodes.
Yeah, one a week for 300 episodes. And so we were literally standing next to each other. And while we were doing that, all we were doing was talking about films, watching movies, writing stuff together. So we know each other very well. We've got a very good shorthand and respect for the way each other works. And then, so that sort of that relationship naturally evolved because Luke's really strong in ways that I'm weak, and vice versa.
Mm.
And so when it comes to directing, I mean, I'm personally not a big fan of the auteur theory of filmmaking. I'd much rather have a lot of people I trust around to help, because it's so much work. Anything on film just takes so much work that if you have smart, good people around that you trust, that work becomes a pleasure. It helped that we had Luke's brother shooting it, who's an incredibly talented cinematographer. So we had a really good relationship with him, obviously, because he's part of the family. And then so we just, when it came to directing specifically, we just we were able to hand off the responsibility to each other quite seamlessly.
Also,
Okay.
with the long rehearsal process as well, we had done a lot of the directing
Mm.
beforehand anyway. So while we were
Uh-huh.
on set, very if Andy was working with the actors, I was just over with the camera crew, or if Andy was with the art department, I was with someone else, and it was just very the the shoot was almost more of a formality, like a fun formality with a bunch of people that we just really enjoyed being with.
Mm.
But most of the directing was done beforehand.
Yeah, we also storyboarded intensely.
Ah.
So we knew the shots we were going for. I mean, when you don't have much money, you have to plan meticulously, or you're just wasting time standing around with a bunch of people. So we knew each day. We knew that the actors knew what they were doing. They knew they'd already worked all of that stuff out. We knew the shots that we needed to get, and that had been communicated to everyone. So yeah, so it was on set. There was a lot less that we had to just come up with. I mean, occasionally, always you have to pivot or you have to respond to external forces, but that preparation, I think, stood us in good stead.
Yes, yes. I was intrigued by the way that you used different time periods, going back and forth, sort of flashbacks, flash forwards, etc. Interesting construction of the storyline, which I thought was quite intriguing, and no spoilers about, of course, the way it concludes.
Yeah, good.
Yeah, I mean our original earlier drafts of the script were very linear. I think it was when Veronica Siv came on,
The producer.
as a co-producer. We handed her a script that we thought was perfect, and it was about 114 pages. And she got it and said, "This is good. I'll produce this with you if you cut it down to 90." And we spent a couple of days just going, "That's impossible. This is absurd. There's no way we can cut out almost a quarter of this. Every page is a diamond encrusted piece of gold." But then I think Luke had the idea of changing rearranging the timeline in such a way that we could lose a bunch of stuff, and we managed to get it down to, I think, under 90 pages. And it's probably the best. That was probably the best production note we ever got, was to cut that quarter of the film out, because that 90-page script was infinitely better than the 114 pages we thought was so excellent.
Fair enough. It's always good to have another set of eyes to have a look at your production and how it could perhaps be tighter. So no, well done on that. Why?
Yeah, there's not a lot of fat in it anymore. It's quite a tight film.
Yes, it is. It is. That's why it was so effective. I thought it's very tightly produced. Why call the film Blue Canaries?
Luke?
Sorry, I missed that. I just had a bit of a stutter in the internet connection.
Why call the film Blue Canaries? It was a phrase that we got from the policeman that we originally spoke to. He referred to beat cops. So a lot of the cop stuff that we see, a lot of the police culture that we see, is based around detectives. And but the beat cops are the ones who show up. Like, anytime there's a call for anything, they'll show up and see what's happening. And in his words, he was like, "Yeah, we're like Blue Canaries, because we could be walking into a fist fight, or we could be walking into a murder scene, and how we respond is when they decide who to call to actually do something effective." So the canaries in the coal mine kind of thing.
Yeah, that's how the big cops refer to themselves. They get thrown in there, and if they die, things are going bad.
Yeah.
It's awfully cynical, but wonderfully sort of colorful. I like it.
Yes, yes. No, it's very effective. I was just intrigued as to how the title was decided upon. Also, I was impressed with the use of music and sound design and so on in the film. That was quite well put together, I thought.
Thank you. Yeah, I used to be a musician for a long time, and one of my oldest friends, Joel Listics as he's known, is a musician in Melbourne who's been working a lot in sort of. He used to be a hip hop musician, and he's bridged out into all sorts of stuff. And he's quite. I know he was quite focused on analog synthesizers and ambient electronic music at the moment, which I knew would be a really good fit for a film like this. So I was quite pleased that we could go to him, and he agreed to score. It's the first film he's scored. It's the first time we'd done anything, but it was also one of those situations where we'd watched the film a million times during the edit and post, and it wasn't until quite late in the picture that we actually started getting the score back. And we had that experience of watching this film that we'd seen a million times suddenly gain this whole new dimension when the score came in. If anyone's not made a film before, I can highly recommend it, just for that moment where you get to put the score down and suddenly this this sort of thing that you've lost focus with suddenly gains this entire new dimension. It's an incredible thing. So yeah,
Yep.
Joel did an amazing job. I look forward to working with him again.
It was
Yes.
incredible. I remember the first time where we put that track down uh, over one of the really intense scenes, and I didn't know what I was thinking that the music would sound like,
Mm.
but it wasn't what Joel had done. Joel had done something so much better than anything that I had imagined. It was exhilarating. I had such a good day that day. I walked away from the edit suite going, we might be onto something.
Well done on that. It certainly makes the film even more effective. So well done
Hmm.
on that. Um, Tell me about getting the film seen, because that's always an issue, getting a distributor and getting it out there.
Yeah, well, Veronica was very helpful in connecting us with Bounty, who Paul and Leslie at Bounty are the ones who agreed to come on board and distribute it for us locally. And they've been really great. They got it onto Channel 9 almost before it was finished. They managed to get a broadcast on Channel 9. I'm not sure how they did it, just some sort of dark magic, probably. Something got sacrificed along the way. But yeah, now it's a matter of, I mean, this is the problem for everyone in this current part of the culture, isn't it? Like there's 20,000 things that are coming out this month to add to the infinite amount of things that have been made since the beginning of cinema. And we have to somehow hold our head up above the waves and get noticed by people who want to watch it. So we're just trying everything at the moment to get people to watch it, because we're really proud of it and we think it's really good, entertaining film. It's under 90 minutes, which I think is
There's a real selling point these days.
yeah, it's a rare thing in films these days to actually fit into that window. I think the 2 hour plus film is an issue for me personally with my timetable. But yeah, so anything we can do to get people to see it. I'm not sure what that is, but we'll find out. Hopefully people do get to see it.
Well, hopefully.
I mean, thank you for having us on board.
Pleasure.
Sorry?
Pleasure. Yeah, I know it. Very happy to talk to you about the film, because I was quite impressed by it, and I was wondering if you've shown it to particular audiences, such as perhaps police officers.
We've had discussions about this. It seems like there might be a little bit of a hunger for it, which is good. So we might be trying to set up a screening in the next couple of months for police officers. We've got a screening in a week or two with a university.
Ah,
I can't.
Yeah,
Can't
a little
remember.
film club. We had when we did a cast and crew screening, and one of our original police consultant, we had a couple, brought one of his younger officers down with him to watch it, and she had no idea what it was, and it was quite heartening talking to her and hearing her say, yeah, that was a pretty good reflection of what it's like on your first couple of days in the police force. So based on that sort of reaction, I think I'd love to show it to police. I mean, we tried to write a film that was not that was critical of the role of police, but not critical of people who work as police, because I think it's if you're the kind of person who chooses to go into the police force, often you're doing it because you have very honourable desires, like you want to help people. It's just that the system that you then have to work in is so broken that they end up often doing more harm than good, and it's a systemic problem. It's not a people problem. So I mean, if we can communicate that back to the police and they can help change and in some way help change that system, that would be a wonderful thing.
oh, that would be very effective, and because it's certainly up close and personal, the way that you made the film, both of you, in terms of the day-to-day role of police officers who are in difficult circumstances and how they have to react so quickly to situations, and those reactions may not necessarily be always the best ones. So yeah, no, that I found very effective. So Andy and Luke, both of you already working on another film?
Yeah, we are. We just had a meeting last night. Actually, we're breaking a story now that's probably in a similar sort of world to Blue Canaries, in that it's another sort of social realism thriller kind of thing. We have a good friend of ours who we did the screenwriting course with, who works in domestic violence as an advocate, and so we're talking to her and using her research and working with her, hoping to make something in that space. Again, about the problems with the system as it applies to the victims of domestic violence and how difficult that is. But it's very early stages at the moment. And I mean, the idea with Blue Canaries was always to learn how to make a film and how to turn it into something that can sustain itself, so that we can make more films that make enough money to make another film, kind of thing. So we're learning those lessons now. We've learned a lot already, and hopefully we can execute them on the next one. But
Yeah,
to make one as soon as possible.
Yeah, and we also came across a whole bunch of resources as we were making the first film. So it's now that we've got those resources, which include people, which include advisors, which include actors, which include crew, we just want to be able to go, oh, okay, we can do all of this again, but probably better or more efficiently, or just in a different way. So not straying too far from the source material in Blue Canaries isn't such a bad idea, because we're in that world. We've been in that world for a while, so we can now just take the next step.
Yep.
Exciting.
Absolutely.
Yeah, although I would like to make a comedy at some stage.
But not Police Academy.
Not Police Academy.
Although that's about due for a reboot, isn't it?
It probably is. Okay, that's great. And I must ask both of you, Andy and Luke, were there any particular films or filmmakers or whatever that served as perhaps inspiration to making Blue Canaries?
Oh, absolutely. The first film that we were looking at was Locke, the Tom Hardy star piece, where it's just him in a car. Yeah, so we watched that one a few times and just thought, you know what, maybe this something so contained can be interesting. And we use that as our sort of benchmark. But then from there, we just went, oh, actually, we can separate and spread out a little bit.
Yeah. Locke
Sydney
gave us the inspiration that we could do a contained film that can be riveting. Like, that's just like, it's such a good film and so small that we were like, oh, you can do it. You just have to write really well. So hopefully we've done that. I think the two Safdie brothers films, Good Time, Cut Gems, were really good touchstones for us, just because of that. I mean, the soundtrack was that sort of soundtrack was what I was thinking when I was talking to Joel, and also just the immediacy of those films. Like, they're so tense and they're not super enjoyable. I don't think I'd ever want to watch them again, but they're so expertly done, and they're so, like, there's such a propulsive nature to them, and plus all of that sort of street photography that they use was a real strong influence on what we were talking about.
The 1970s New York were also, you know, everything on the street, everything a bit dirty and grimy. It looks quite real. We were going for a similar aesthetic. And in terms of directing, Sidney Lumet was quite influential as well. Yeah,
we literally stole a Sidney Lumet technique from 12 Angry Men with our film. We just I was reading his book, and he talked about, for 12 Angry Men, he progressively used longer and longer lenses as the film progressed, to create that sense of the walls closing in. So we just said, let's do that. So we started, during the day, we're using wide lenses, and it's more open, the background's further away, and then as the night progresses, the lens gets longer and longer. We get closer and closer in, kind of thing.
Ah.
And I think that was an effective sort of constraint to use. I mean, these sorts of constraints it's just what you have to celebrate when you're working in low budget film. You need to use them to your advantage.
Oh, very clever. Yes, absolutely. Now that on reflection, I can see what you've done. Yeah, no, well done on that. That's very effective. Well, it's great to see that Blue Canaries is on release on various digital platforms, courtesy of Bounty Films. And we've been speaking to the writers, directors of Blue Canaries, Luke Mounsey and Andy Lane. Thank you so much for talking with me.
No,
Thank
you
you,
very much.
Peter. Can I just say before we finish, I just want to
Yes.
thank you for putting all of this energy into the Australian film industry. Like, what you do is really important, and not many people do it. And thank you so much. I really appreciate the time and energy you put in.
My pleasure.
Well,
I'm full supporter of Australian film. Yeah.
It's great. Thank you.
Okay.
thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks. All the best.
Okay, see you later.
Okay.